So let's take a look at a position swing trade, high time frame macro view, and look at how we would approach trade, potential setup, and what it all means. So here we're just going to start off with the basics. We're looking at our higher lows and higher highs, and we have bullish market structure. We can see that we've reached a swing high up here. Sellers have stepped in. We are starting to illustrate bearish market structure with lower highs and lower lows. We have identified a consolidation zone or a range right here where price is kind of trying to figure out what it wants to do. And we have a breakdown area. So we could consider this an SR breakdown. And we've come back to a key level as we have identified on our chart in this prior price action. You can see price is coming up into a supply zone, resistance, sellers step in, push the price down to here, and our buyers are stepping in. And now we have our higher low, we have a breakout and a retest, identifying this as a SR flip on a high time frame. We know that the buyers stepped in here, and we can see that it started a very nice uptrend. So as we learned in time frame analysis video, we want to identify this area and look at a potential long entry or a position where we want to be a buyer as price comes back in here. So let's see what we would set up here. Here's our area that we have identified. Support, long lower wick, the buyer stepped in. It was a very obvious level that if we're to price come back into it, we want to pay attention to it. So here we have our consolidation, our breakdown, and we've come back into our level. And here's our first indication of the buyers with a fairly bullish candle. So we're going to look at this as our level where our buyers have stepped in. Now, depending on your trading strategy and how you want to set it up, we could be buyers here, or we could look for price to unfold a bit more, identify candlestick structure and see, are the buyers coming in here? Are the sellers running out of steam? Am I going to make a higher low? And this is where we could look at our entry. Now, this says stop, which stands for stop loss. We haven't gone over that, but it's a way for us to set up a trade and define our risk and create invalidation levels. So if this was our potential position here, and we know that our buyers are right here at a demand zone and support, we want to enter here, we could say that below this price our trade is invalidated. And we're going to get into what invalidation is. And this is our entry. So our stop loss is going to be our point where if price goes below it, my position will close. I've only lost this defined amount of my portfolio. I have my risk reward ratio defined and my exit strategy already planned out. Now, as we talked about, position, swing, higher time frame, this is the type of trade where you believe there's an inflection point on a macro high time frame market view. We can see that we're making higher lows here. We're entering here. We're defining our risk based on this swing point and this current swing point. And we're targeting an exit around a key point of breakdown or a SR breakdown. Here was our support, which has turned to resistance. We can see as price comes back into it here, it's broken through it, but we have defined our exit as here. This is what we could make, and this is what a potential high time frame position swing trade would look like. Now this tool right here is something we're going to be utilizing going forward, and this is a tool in TradingView that's going to allow us to set up our trades, define our risk, identify our exits, and know exactly what we're doing, and our plan is in place. Moving on, we're going to look at something called a day swing. So as we talked about crypto, younger asset class, less time on the chart. So, a day swing trade in this instance would look something like this. Again, we're going to identify the trend. We're seeing bullish market structure as we're making higher lows and higher highs. We're identifying SR levels. In this case, we have an SR flip. We have come back into it. It's respected all. This swing high broken, breakout, retest. We have support here. We can see another key level right here. We've identified a swing high. As we can see, price breaks through it. We have a retest, and we're making new highs. So 2 key areas that if price were to come back into it, I want to be paying attention. Now we're looking at a daily chart on a swing setup. Moving over here, we can see we have a breakdown. We've identified a swing high, another breakdown, and another breakdown. Now this breakdown matches up with this SR flip right here. So our support has become resistance. We're breaking down here and we're coming back into our next support level. I've identified a swing low, just like we did in the past example, based on this prior price action around this swing high and this SR flip and support. Again, I could be a buyer here, or I could wait for more price action to unfold. And let's see how we would look at this. Here we can see we've got our swing low, lines up nicely with our SR flip. Let's say this is our theoretical entry. We're coming back, we're retesting a support zone for the first time. Buyers should be present if our SR flip is acting as it should. Again, we'll be using this going forward. We've got our handy tool to set up our trade for this long position. We've identified our stop loss and validation. We're going to get into all this. Again, this is a primer. And we can look at our SR breakdown as a potential exit. And we can see that as prices run into this SR, we are flipping it, retesting it. And this should give you more confidence in your trade. And we're going to talk about things called trailing stops as we're moving up our stop loss to lock in profit. This is not a strategy you have to implement, but it is a tool that we're going to tell you about. Or we can have things called take profit levels, right? So this was my first kind of area where I think resistance would be based on this breakdown. Maybe I want to take some profit here, and my next take profit is here. Again, we're going to get into all this. It's going to start to make a lot more sense as we move forward with it. But again, I just want to start to intro you into how a trader is looking at a setup based on all the things we just learned, right? Swing points, support and resistance levels, SR flips. Now we're introducing entries, exits, stop losses, defining my risk. This entry is going to be key as Zoran starts to talk about something called LTE, level trigger entry. So moving forward, let's take a look at a scalping setup, because this is a strategy I use a lot when the market has not defined a trend to me and I see that we're in a range-bound consolidation market. Again, going back to some of the first lessons, what are we looking at in a range-bound market? Well, we're looking at a conversation between our buyers and our sellers. So we know that we want to be buyers in our demand zone at support. We're going to be getting into things called DBS, demand buyer support zones, and we want to identify our resistance where supply is being pushed onto the market by the sellers. And we're going to be looking at something called the SSR, seller supply resistance. All these acronyms are going to start to help you as you look at a chart and you're going to say, okay, this is really where I want to enter my trade. This is where I want to exit my trade. This is my trigger, whether it be a key swing point or I'm looking at the candle structure, right? Like all these little things, like here's a long-legged wick on this doji. Maybe the seller is running out of steam. So as you're starting to process this, it's going to start to make more sense. So here we have our range-bound market. Let's see a potential setup for this. Well, we know that this is a clear demand zone right here. The buyer stepped in. If price were to come back into this area, we want to be a buyer. We can see here, price has broken down, comes back in. Now we can identify this wick as our swing low, right? So that is my area I want to use as a gauge to, if price goes below this, this trade is probably not valid. That's an invalidation. I'm also going to be positioning my stop loss around this key swing point. More conservative entry could say reclaiming this range low as we're coming back and we're retesting a support zone, right? It's almost acting as an SR flip. We've identified this area based on our candle structure, that this could be a good potential long area. We're going to be defining our risk off of the swing low, and we're going to be using an exit strategy around our breakdown point and our supply zones that we have identified. Now, this scalping setup is great for minute charts, hourly charts. We're going to get into all the strategies and specifics behind that going forward. But again, want to intro you to this and get you familiar with this concept. So let's do a quick recap. Just make sure that everyone kind of understands the different type of trading strategies and the mentality behind each one. So as we're looking at swing and position trading, that's our higher time frame macro views. We're still identifying swing points, support and resistance levels, and we want to focus on the trend, right? On a macro position trade, I want to be riding with the trend at a possible inflection point. Swing trading, I'm going to be looking at swing points, whether it be around daily, weekly, or monthly levels for my entries and exits. We just spoke about day trading. That's someone who's looking at a position during the specific market hours where they're opening and closing. So there's not having risk or exposure on the outside of those market hours. Crypto, 24/7, completely different than traditional markets. Scalping, very good strategy to use when the trend is not entirely clear. Again, we could be in a range-bound consolidation market. We're looking at lower time frame to kind of scalp the positions between when the sellers are coming and when the buyers are coming in. Range low, range high. As you start to think about all this stuff and what kind of trader you want to be, this is going to help you define your strategy, and that's ultimately going to help you define yourself as a trader, right? There's steps to this whole process. So we're learning the tools. We want to figure out what kind of trader we are based on kind of the mentality we just learned about the higher time frame traders versus lower time frame traders. That's going to help you figure out your system, and your system is the tools that you're going to be implementing, the time frames that you want to trade around. And this is going to all help you become a more confident and profitable trader, right? The more disciplined you are, the better trader you're going to be. And as you start to hone in on all of these things, ultimately that's going to help you with your edge. And that's going to be a very fun and important section that Zorn and I will be going over in the future. But for now, really start to digest the trading strategies, what we just went over, and really reflect on what kind of trader do I want to be, and think about these things as we move forward into the other courses as we advance into this section.